the whisper that changed everything. My husband hadn't even been buried, yet when my daughter-in-law leaned toward me, she didn't cry. She didn't offer comfort. She simply smiled and whispered, "We've already decided what happens to his estate." For a second, the whole room went silent. The flowers, the prayers, the people pretending to mourn, none of it mattered anymore. Because in that single sentence, she accidentally revealed the truth. They weren't waiting to honor the man they had lost. They were waiting to divide everything he had built. I looked at her. I nodded once. Then I smiled. And I quietly answered, "So have I, with the lawyer he hired 3 months before he died." The color disappeared from her face. She stepped back. My son looked confused. My husband's brother suddenly stopped talking. And I realized something. The people I had called family for 35 years had never expected me to know the truth. But my husband had. And before he passed away, he left me one final gift. A plan. A secret. And a promise that would expose every lie. Set up. The family everyone envied. My name is Eleanor. I was married to Richard for 35 years. We weren't rich when we started. We lived in a tiny apartment. I worked double shifts. Richard built a construction company one customer at a time. We sacrificed vacations. We missed birthdays. We spent nights worrying about bills. But eventually, everything changed. The company grew. We bought our dream house. Our son Michael joined the business. When Michael married Olivia, I welcomed her like a daughter. At least, I thought I did. Over time, Richard started noticing little things. Family dinners became business meetings. Olivia always asked about money. Michael always wanted to know about ownership papers. His younger brother, Daniel, suddenly became interested in investments. Even Richard's own brother, Victor, kept bringing up wills and inheritance. At first, I laughed. I thought I was imagining it. But Richard wasn't laughing. One night he sat beside me and said, "If something ever happens to me, trust actions, not tears." I asked him why he would say something so strange. He only smiled. Then he changed the subject. I didn't know that conversation would haunt me, because 6 months later, Richard was gone. And his warning suddenly made perfect sense. First signs of betrayal. The funeral was supposed to be about saying goodbye. Instead, people were counting assets. I overheard Victor talking to Michael. "The company should stay with blood," Olivia replied. "And the house is too much for one person anyway." One person. That was me. The woman who had helped build everything. The woman who had stood beside Richard since the beginning. I wasn't even part of their conversation. Later that evening, I found Olivia inside Richard's office. She quickly closed a drawer. "Oh, I was just looking for family photos." But there were no photo albums in that drawer. Only legal papers. The next day, Michael asked me something that broke my heart. "Mom, maybe you should move into a smaller place." I stared at him. His father had been gone for less than 48 hours. He couldn't even look me in the eyes. That's when I understood. They had already planned my future. And I wasn't part of theirs. That night, I sat alone in my bedroom. I cried until there were no tears left. Then I opened Richard's old desk. Inside was a single envelope. My name was written across the front. In his handwriting. My hands were shaking. Inside was a short note. "If they start acting differently, call Margaret. She already knows everything." Under the note was a phone number. And a business card. And estate lawyer. The big betrayal. The next morning, I called the lawyer. Margaret answered immediately. She sounded calm, almost as if she had been expecting my call. She asked me to come to her office alone. When I arrived, she placed a thick folder on the desk. She looked at me and said, "Your husband changed his estate plan 3 months ago." I couldn't understand. Richard never told me. Margaret explained why. He had discovered that someone inside the family had been copying financial records. Someone had tried to pressure him into signing ownership transfers. Someone had even prepared documents before he passed away. My heart sank. Who? Margaret slid photographs across the table. Michael, Olivia, Victor, meeting together, talking with another lawyer, preparing papers. I couldn't breathe.
My own son.
The little boy I had raised. The child I had protected. He had been helping them. Margaret reached into the folder again. There is something else. She showed me in signed property documents. They had planned to remove me from the family home. They thought Richard would never know. But he had known everything. And instead of arguing, he had quietly prepared his response. Emotional breakdown. I drove to the lake where Richard and I used to sit. I looked at the water and remembered our first date. The first house we painted together. The nights we dreamed about giving our children a better life. Where had I failed? How had love turned into greed? For the first time, I wondered if money had destroyed my family. I wanted to forgive them. I wanted to believe there had been some mistake. Then my phone rang. It was Olivia. She didn't ask how I was. She asked, "When is the will reading?" I closed my eyes. And, in that moment, something inside me changed. The sadness was still there, but the fear was gone. Richard had trusted me. He had prepared me. If I stayed silent now, his final wish would mean nothing. I wiped away my tears. I looked at the sky, and I whispered, "I won't let them erase us." Then I called Margaret. "I'm ready." Revenge plan. Margaret explained the plan. We wouldn't argue. We wouldn't accuse anyone. We would simply let the truth speak. The family gathered 3 days later. Everyone arrived early. Michael looked confident. Victor was smiling. Olivia acted as though the future already belonged to her. Margaret entered carrying 2 folders. One was the old estate file. The other was Richard's final instructions. She began reading. Richard thanked his family. He spoke about honesty, about sacrifice, about trust. Then came the part nobody expected. If anyone has attempted to manipulate my state or pressure my family, they have already disqualified themselves from managing my company. The room froze. Victor looked nervous. Michael's hands started shaking. Olivia whispered something under her breath. Margaret wasn't finished. Richard had included investigation reports, financial records, witness statements, every secret meeting, every hidden plan, every attempt to take control. He had documented everything. Not for revenge. For justice. Climax, the truth exposed. Olivia stood up. "This isn't fair." Victor shouted that the documents were lies. Michael stayed silent. Margaret calmly placed one final envelope on the table. It contained a personal letter. Richard's last message. She read it aloud. "To my son, I loved you enough to forgive your mistakes. But leadership belongs to people who protect family, not people who profit from pain." Michael broke down. He started crying. He admitted everything. Victor had convinced him that he deserved more. Olivia had pushed him to act quickly. They believed I would never know. They believed Richard was too sick to notice. They were wrong. Richard had transferred control of the company into a protected trust. The family home belonged to me. The business would be managed by a professional board. And the money set aside for future grandchildren would remain untouched. Nobody could steal it. Nobody could change it. Olivia sat there completely speechless. Victor walked out without saying goodbye. Michael looked at me and whispered,
"Mom,
I'm sorry, but some words arrived too late." Resolution plus moral lesson. Weeks passed. The house became quiet again. I planted new flowers in the garden Richard loved. I learned to live without him. Michael kept trying to call. Eventually I answered. Not because I forgot, but because carrying anger forever only creates more pain. Forgiveness doesn't erase betrayal. It simply stops betrayal from controlling your future. I told my son something his father once told me. Money shows who people are. Hard times reveal who family really is. Some people think the story is about inheritance. It isn't. It's about trust. It's about loyalty. And it's about the quiet strength of people who refuse to be broken. At my husband's funeral, they thought they were burying the only person who could stop them. They were wrong. Because the greatest gift he left behind wasn't money. It was the truth. And the truth has a strange way of waiting until the perfect moment to leave everyone speechless. Remember this. Never underestimate the quiet person in the room. Sometimes they already know the ending of the story.